I was going to travel to San Diego for Comic Con. We had a client that had us build some things for them. I had never been to San Diego or to Comic Con, though it was a bucket list event. I was also going alone and hadn't travelled for work up to that point. Needless to say, it didn't start off right from the jump. The flight was delayed because of rain, and I had to wait. While I waited, the travel agent called me to tell me that there was a problem with the hotel I was staying at in San Diego, and that they would need to book me into a different hotel, which was going to be hard given it was Comic Con week. They said they would have it sorted by the time I landed, and that they would text me the info, so I had it. I finally boarded the flight and we took off. Man, that flight was terrible. Bad weather made for a crazy ride, and I'm not a great flyer when the weather stinks. We landed, and when I turned my phone on, there was the text from the agent, which gave me the name and information code for the new hotel I would be at the Hotel del Coronado. Pay dirt. Anyone knows at the Coronado knows this was a big deal. For the ghost haunters, this place is awesome. But as a hotel, this place is beautiful and right on the ocean. So yeah, me. The downfall went more travel in taxis, because it was a ways away from the convention centre. So I took a taxi to the hotel, and when I got there, it was pretty busy. Lots of people trying to check in, so I got my stuff and got in line. As I was standing there, an old man that was in front of me turned and smiled at me, saying it was always busy this time of year. I agreed to say I can imagine. He took this as a cue to strike up a conversation and ask me what brought me here. I told him that I got moved to this hotel after mine had an issue, and that I was here for a convention. He smiled, and I asked him what he was here for. He said that he's been coming here for years with his wife. I looked around for his wife, and just as the line cleared and he moved forward, he was next, and that seemed to end the conversation, and he started to check in. I keep waiting for his wife to walk up, but he finished and turned to me and wished me a good stay. I smiled and said the same to him. I checked in and went to my room, which turned out to be down the hall from the old man I had met in the lobby. The next day, I went to the show, and after it was pretty late when I got back. I went down to the bar and saw the old man. I sat down and asked if I could order the food, they said. I could, but I needed to sit over at the tables. This became pretty normal to see the old man from that point, somewhere in the hotel. 2 days later, I came back from the show early enough to go to the outdoor sitting and get a nice view of the ocean. As I was getting sat, I noticed the old man across from me and still no wife. I was beginning to think she didn't exist. I sat there looking at the menu, but kept glancing at the old man and started to think about the idea of ending up like him. But then I thought, it looks like he was looking for someone, and I thought, well, maybe she was around somewhere. After a moment, he looked my way and smiled. He then got up and came over asking if he could sit with me. Not wanting to be rude, I said sure. As he sat down, I asked where his wife was. He said, I'm sure she's around. He introduced himself as James, name changed, and asked if I was eating alone. I said yes, and he asked if he could sit with me. We sat and talked about life and what I did. He said they had been coming here for a very long time and that this was their honeymoon. And all I kept thinking was, where was his wife? I couldn't bring myself to ask him, but it nagged at me. Then after about an hour, he glanced over toward the water and said it was time to go with a smile. I said okay and thanked him for the company, and he walked back toward the hotel. I finished and went back to my room. The next day, I went to the show and came back in the afternoon. As I got out of the taxi, I noticed an ambulance in the front, and as I walked in, I had to bang in the lobby as they finished up. I asked a bellboy what happened, and he said he thinks someone died. I remember getting a cold chill. Finally, I was able to move enough to go to the elevator. As I entered my floor, I noticed there was a commotion down the hall towards James's room. As I got closer, I noticed a police officer talking to an employee, and they pointed toward me. I freaked a little as the officer walked my way. He approached me and told me that he wanted to ask me some questions. He explained that the old man down the hall had passed away and that the employee said I knew him. I explained that I had met him recently and better at dinner last night. He asked me about how he was feeling, and I said everything seemed fine. I asked about his wife. He looked at me puzzled and then down at his pad. He said that he was unaware of a wife and motioned to the employee. He asked the employee, and they said that he didn't check in with anyone and radioed down to the front desk. Someone then came up and said that James had a standing booking in that room every year for the last 25 years, and that his wife had died 4 years ago, but not here. I was shocked he didn't talk about her as if she had passed. The officer thanked me, and I asked if he went well. He said that he had passed in his sleep, and there were no signs of anything but peacefulness. The officer walked away, and I went back into my room. Later, I went to dinner and couldn't help but look around for him. I know, weird, right? After dinner, I went to one of the bars by the water and I got a drink and sat looking out at the water. Out of the corner of my eye, I noticed a couple walking down the beach. I'm not sure why I looked, because there were a lot of people on the beach, and they were pretty far down, but close enough to see who it was. I smiled, raised my glass toward them, and went back to watching the water. The next day, I flew home, and after a day or so, it passed through my mind. A few years later, I went back to the Hotel del Coronado, and that is when I remembered James and his wife. My team and I checked in and later went to dinner. I raised a toast to James, which I had to explain the story to the team, and his wife. I haven't had the opportunity to go back in a long time, but I'm sure they're still there, walking the beach and enjoying their eternal honeymoon. I live in the middle of nowhere in the American Midwest. Many people, including family members, have died on the land, and seeing things around here is very common. The story starts with me being around 14 and talking to my mom through the window of her car. I felt a tap on my left shoulder blade and heard someone whisper hello. Thinking it was my brother, I turned around annoyed to tell them to leave me alone, but there was no one. There was nowhere to hide anywhere near me, and everyone but my mom was inside. I kind of brushed it off and forgot about it. About a week later, I was going inside after school and I was going to be home alone for a few hours. I got maybe 2 steps inside when what felt like a branding iron was pressed into my left shoulder blade in the same spot I felt the tap a week prior. It was painful enough to leave me on the ground breathless and in tears. This happened every time I was alone for years until I finally left the house 2 years ago. I went back in the other day because the people renting it had moved out and I was doing the initial inspection. The whole time I was there, I felt like something was watching me and I was very on edge. As I was about to walk out the door, I felt another small tap on my left shoulder blade and I left immediately and did not look back. Recently bought a house in April 2021 in Oklahoma City. It was built in the 70s and had an addition at some point that holds the master bed, bath, and laundry room. Love this house, y'all. It's so cute. Partner equals they. My partner uses they, them pronouns. Well, my partner fell asleep in the guest room a couple of weeks ago. We bought a brand new guest bed and it's really comfortable. They fell asleep and dreamt that something was under the bed. It was so terrifying, they sprinted back to our room. The dream was very vivid and scary. I get pretty freaked out when I use the guest bathroom. I guess these would have been the master bed and bath prior to the addition. I don't always close the door, and when you use the bathroom, you look all of the way down the hallway to the guest bedroom. You can look into a corner and see a small old chair I bought a couple of months ago. Apparently, my partner won't use that bathroom at all in the dark because it's so terrifying. Now the weirdest. Last night, there was a loud sound that woke my partner up. It came from in the house. They thought it was one of our 2 cats, but they were both in bed with us. They went to check and it was 2 magnets that had fallen off of the fridge. The weird part is that we have stuff on the fridge but we only have two crude, I guess, magnets, and these are the ones that fell. One says Hail Satan, and the other's a picture of a guy holding a sign that says God hates insert glue for gay people with an F, with a punk guy next to him holding a sign that says F this guy. So a little crass compared to the sweet birthday cards and more normal magnets. These magnets weren't next to each other. The Hail Satan one is strong. The other one isn't. It's a new fridge. We checked our security system and saw no movement. We of course don't have cameras in the guest bedroom, bathrooms and the kitchen, which we plan on getting a camera for the kitchen. Also, we are a queer atheist couple. We have been living together almost 6 years and have never felt weird about the place. I buy almost everything that I can secondhand. We have our 2 cats and 2 big dogs, who acted like there was no noise, which is crazy because they're usually sensitive. Any tips for peace of mind? Maybe some sage? Help! Okay, so it begins with a story from my mom about the weird things she'd see me do. Well, rather she'd hear or find in the morning. I was capable of climbing seemingly bizarre obstacles and performed great feats of baby strength, such as moving a whole crib across the room so my sister could be closer to me. I was always close to my sisters when they were babies, but I have no recollection of anything my parents talk about. All of those early memories with my sisters are spiteful and hate-filled. My parents will also go in great detail about my night terrors. Think nightmares, but you scream and yell bloody murder. I have no memory of it either. They also still tell me I talk in my sleep, but no one else has ever mentioned it. And before you go and tell me I might have been too young, they still say I talk in my sleep, and I had the night terrors until I was around 8. That's what I've been told, because again, I don't remember any of it. I would also get scratches on my body. I'm a nervous wreck and don't have any nails, so I don't know what causes them. Moving forward a few years, we moved around the city and landed next to my grandparents' house. The house we moved into is where the rest of my story takes place. So I want to go into some important things to note. We have a crawl space, both above and below us. In the upper crawl space, there's an assorted items in boxes and most of our power is up there. We have no insulation in our walls. The house was built in the 40s. I sleep in between my mom and my sister's rooms, and I used to sleep on a loft bed close to the ceiling. Okay, with that done, I continue. In my middle school years, I used the loft bed because it allowed me to have more space underneath. The unfortunate part was I got to experience some bizarre things. Handprints and more scratches, sounds and whispering. I even got a chance to experience sleep paralysis once. Not fun. I don't suggest trying it. Being so close to the ceiling of my room, I thought just generally moving about in my sleep was causing them. To my horror, when I was investigating them, they didn't wipe away. I and my friends didn't make the same marks. Mine took away dust. Those added dust to the ceiling. Even if I did make the same marks with my hands, I wouldn't be able to explain the handprints that appeared one morning on the other side of my room. At least 4 feet off the side of the bed. I'm not that tall, and even if I was, I don't know how, while sleeping, I'd be able to make those marks. I don't remember making them, so I concluded I was sleeping. The whispering was general nonsense and gibberish. The noises ranged from light footsteps in the dead of night to the buzz of a bee. After asking everyone if they were up at the same time I heard the noises, I would always get a consistent no. Most recently, I've encountered more noises. There was a ring of a phone in the crawl space above us, the reason why I brought it up earlier. Except I wasn't the first to notice it, it was my dad. He slept on the couch for personal family reasons. It wasn't like those modern ringtones, it was a rotary phone. Something my family doesn't own, let alone keeps in the crawl space. Every 2 minutes on the dot, it would ring for a few seconds and then stop. You had to be pretty quiet to hear it. It was muffled pretty well with the ceiling and walls. My sisters don't know about it, unless they heard it and didn't tell us, me, my mum and dad. And we don't normally speak about everything that's been happening. Also, it could just be me and crazy coincidence, but every time I leave my house for extended periods of time, like more than a day or two, I usually find myself getting injured. From broken bones to the inability to walk, seizing and losing breath. To clarify those last three, when I was younger, sometimes my legs would give out from under me, like someone was kicking my back of my knees. I was, and still am, pretty involved in sports, so I don't know why it would happen and then has since stopped. The seizing is less seizing, more migraines. Learned I have hemiplegic migraines. When I first got them, I had all the signs of seizing: loss of feeling in one half of my body, slurred speech, trouble thinking and producing words. Except, I never passed out. I remember all of them vividly. So it ruled out seizures in the doctor's eyes. And the loss of breath is that stupid pang of pain in your lungs you get sometimes. And you can't breathe in deeply, otherwise, it feels like your lungs are being torn apart. I've heard some people get it, so I never paid much attention to it. Those are probably unrelated, but I thought I'd mention them just in case. And because someone will ask, I'm sure. Yes, I've used a Ouija board. No, nothing happened as a result. And the time frame of middle school and elementary school. Well before the rotary phone, but around the same time I was using the loft bed. Other than some small hallucinations of random objects moving and dancing around, that's really all I can think of at this time. Weirdly though, I had a cat and a dog, separate times, that both refused to go into that room. They'd have to be bribed in with food to even think about moving past my door. Everyone I've had over also says they feel like something is off with the room. A general feeling of uneasiness and the feeling of being watched when you stay in there for too long. I can't explain any of my experiences, and I was hoping that someone could help me get an explanation, or closure, or something. I'm a 21-year-old male who lives in Brazil, more specifically, Rio de Janeiro. Almost all of the following stories happened to me while I was a kid, except for the last one. The first story was when I was on the experience day in my old middle school, around 6 years old. It was a 200 plus years old private Catholic school run by nuns. I had always been quite the social kid, and my mom wanted me to try new schools. This one was well known in the neighbourhood, so she booked a day for me to know the other kids and the teacher. I usually have a very good memory, and from this day, all I can recall is the whole class was made of blonde kids, like some Nazi youth kind of thing. Even the teacher was stupidly blonde. I remember them treating me very nicely, but there was something that kept bothering me about the whole situation. As a kid, I couldn't properly express myself, and I simply burst into tears after 2 hours on the visit. I still don't really know what it was. My mom says that when she went to pick me up, I was crying and saying that the teacher was too old, and I didn't want her to teach me. Well, fast forward a year. Note that my mom still find that very odd, but I simply turned to her and said that I wanted to go to the school I had visited a year earlier. She said fine. After all, she wanted me to change schools, and I started going there the next year. There is one thing, though, that always bothered me about this story. Absolutely none of the friends remembered me being there the year before, and not a single one of the kids I saw was there. It was like nothing really existed. Even the classroom I went to, I searched for it, was nowhere to be found. After years in that school, I saw a faceless nun who appeared to be hovering on the winter garden, like 3 times after my soccer practice, one alone and two along with my friends. One of the experiences that bothered me the most is when I was 10 years old, looking to the woods behind the school. I was on the bench during my soccer practice. I saw an all-white creature that looked like a huge dog with only the front legs. I completely froze. Even thinking and writing about this today is giving me chills down my spine. It was as if the creature was looking directly at me, ready to pounce. Just to clarify, for those who are not familiar with the forest in Rio, it's native vegetation from Atlantic forests, dense as hell, but still, I could see the animal clearly as day when the sun had already set. It was around 7 p.m. One friend was sitting by my side and also saw it, but I don't know how he felt. I learned later on that a dog that protected the woods had recently been stabbed and killed by a trespasser, so I thought it was him. I've seen this one about 2 more times alone, but he never stared at me again. It was like he was just passing by the same spots. I had never felt comfortable in churches or chapels. Like there's always something deep in my guts telling me to get out. Like I don't belong. And I believe that this started when I was about 12 years old. Me and a friend decided to explore the school's chapel and play the organ on the second floor. Stupid kids play. When I reached the second floor, entered the holy space and touched the organ, I felt one of the most ominous feelings of dread in my life. I ran for my life, absolutely for no clear reason. My friend said he felt nothing wrong that day and just ran after me. The last two ones are very quick. First, I heard the same screeching violin sound 2 times in my life, the exact same, once when I was 13 years old and another when I was 20 years old, in two completely different places, with nothing that could have made that sound. I have a house that is dated back to 1935. Looking at the history, it had been unowned for about 5 years, and the original owner only had it for about a year. The attic is sealed off completely. I knew it was haunted the night I moved stuff in. I heard talking, like a woman and maybe a child, from inside the house. There have been many other unexplainable events, but one day I found the angel pendant in the window. We have a bee issue with the porch. The previous owner must have had hanging potted plants or just made holes in the wood. I have no idea what they did. One day, I was spraying the bees to get them out and found the pendant hidden inside the window, between the screen and glass. I didn't know what it said or what it really was at first. It was really dusty. So I picked it up and started cleaning it off. It's a stone angel pendant in a plastic case. After a few minutes of cleaning it, one of my cats suddenly skidded across the kitchen floor while the other two ran to the living room. They looked shocked, but they're weird little creatures with their own personalities, so I didn't think too much of it. I won't touch it again after the second time. My mom was the one who had the house inspected, so I thought maybe she knew about it. She didn't. Shortly after showing it to her, she randomly got sick. She's not prone to it, but she had to puke. I was definitely weirded out, but wasn't sure whether to tie it to the pendant until I went upstairs. Whatever is tied to it, it flipped my TV onto its top. Not violently, but perfectly, as if it was a warning for me to leave it alone. I don't know what protects the house, but I learned my lesson. Don't touch the pendant. So I lived in my first house for 14 years. We were the first and only family to live in it. I was always into creepy things, so when I was in 8th grade, I bought a used Ouija board off of eBay, supposedly from Salem, Massachusetts. I had some ideas on how to use it since I did some research beforehand, so I gave it a try a few times with my sister and all my friends. I always made sure to say goodbye. I have two predominant stories stemming from the Ouija board, if anyone is interested. Anyways, we ended up moving out of that house when I was in in high school. I'm now a sophomore in college. We moved to another house in town, so we didn't bother packing everything, and we could periodically go back to it and grab some things. It was a giant house, so we had a lot of crap. It was probably a month or a little more of no one going into the house, where I visited for one of my last times. I started becoming scared to go alone, even going to my old room that was in the finished basement. I would run downstairs and run back as quickly as possible. My heart would be racing, and I could wait outside until Whoever was with me was ready to leave. After a while, no one ever ended up going back, even though we all still had a lot of stuff throughout the house. A lot of what I wanted to bring back. I've only thought about the house occasionally. I drove by it with my boyfriend since I wanted to show him it a few months ago. I had a slight sinking feeling in my gut, but nothing extremely concerning. I decided to post about this tonight because my sister sent me a picture of the house with one of the lights on upstairs. She said that no one should be in the house, and when I suggested maybe they were cleaning it out, she said our remaining stuff was still there, but it was messier. She only looked into the window. When I asked her to elaborate, she said, "There's no way we left it that messy." She also mentioned her and her friend, who didn't know us at the time of living there, had a terrible feeling to run and that they both got extremely bad vibes from the house. Me and my sister remembered how the thick air was during our last visits. I'm only assuming that if this is something paranormal, it came from my Ouija board. However, me and a friend have tried contacting spirits with candles and a pendulum at that time as well. I'm going to stop by the house with my sister when I get off of work tomorrow. I was thinking about bringing a pendulum, but I'm still unsure because I don't want anything to potentially follow us back to our current house. My dad's girlfriend is a part-time real estate agent, so I'm going to ask her if it's possible that someone could have just been in there recently. I know it's been on the market a few times, but nothing ever came of it, since houses in my estate are super expensive. It's not on it currently. Does anyone have any thoughts on this? We moved to my childhood home when I was just 5 years old. It had old carpets and paint with an unfinished basement. I'm the oldest in my family and separated by my younger two brothers by 6 and 10 years of age. It was my parents' starter home, and so it had a lot of work needed. My dad made a deal with me that if I helped him finish the basement, then I could have a room down there, which would essentially make the entire thing mine, as I would be there alone. The first indication that I had that something was off actually happened while I was still helping finish the basement and sleeping upstairs in a room next to my parents' room. My dad snores, and when I say snores, he snores and loud. His snoring sounds like a freight train running at full speed down the tracks. He later was diagnosed with sleep apnea and now has to wear a CPAP machine every night. I was sound asleep and abruptly woke to the shrill snore, snore. I remember thinking something along the lines of, "Crap, I forgot to shut the door again." I'd made it a habit to never forget, or this exact scenario would happen. I got up quietly, shut my parents' door, shut my door, and promptly fell back asleep. And I'm awake again. Sure enough, it's happening again. I remember at this point, I thought that maybe my parents got up to check on me and didn't shut the doors and fell back asleep. Ugh. So I go through the routine of shutting both doors again and fall back asleep. The problem is this happened 6 more times during the night. The next day, I remember being very, very tired and upset. That's the hard part about telling your ghost experiences, is that you can't convey the sheer unease very well that you feel during the time. The feeling that you're being watched, and that even talking about it will get their attention. A dream, perhaps? Sleepwalking? That's what I wrote it off as to until the next incident. This is what I've ended up calling them over the years. It was bright outside, and it couldn't have been later that noon, but I didn't remember for sure. We had a garage with a standard door going from the house to the inside of the garage. The door was closed, and I was walked up to it to put my hand out to open it. And when my hand got within about 1 inch from the handle, it suddenly spun sharply. I have vivid memories of it spinning because I was looking right at it as it did, because I was about to open it myself. The door opens inwards from the garage. My dad's a big man, at least 6'1" and 250 pounds. I was a scrawny runt of a kid at the time, so you can understand my concern that my dad is going to bash the door right into me. I remember that he went out into the garage earlier to cut some sheetrock or some such as he always did. So, anyways, as the handle turned, I jumped back to give it a wide berth. The door swung all the way open, and as I looked, expecting to see my dad in the doorway, I saw nothing. Nothing at all until I looked into the garage and saw my dad, at the very back, cutting a piece of wood. I looked back at the door in horror, only to see the door slam violently shut again. I ran to my mom in the kitchen to tell her what happened, and to this day, she doesn't believe me. Nobody does. My dad, grandpa, and I had finally done it. We had finally finished the basement to my parents' starter home. It had taken a lot longer than expected. At this point, I was already a preteen and had just started junior high. I was in 7th grade. I had made a deal with my father that if I helped finish the basement, I would get to have the room there by myself. The trouble began slowly this time. One night as I was sleeping, I not only heard but felt the drip of water splashing into my pillow. I awoke in the darkness. It was always pitch black down there with the lights off. And I remember thinking, oh great, now there's a leak in the ceiling. I felt around on my pillow and felt nothing. Absolutely nothing. The pillow was completely dry. I got up and turned on the light and nothing was there. No leak. Nothing. I thought this was odd and went back to sleep. This happened about 10 more times, randomly. One night after awakening from the drip, I wake up and I'm just trying to get back to sleep. I've long given up on investigating stupid phenomenon. When all of a sudden, all I can think to explain it is a stampede roars in the upstairs. It sounded like a herd of elephants broke into the house, stampeded through, and busted out the other side. I didn't realize it at the time, but I later realized that nothing was shaking. It was all auditory. I rushed upstairs to find nothing. Nobody was upstairs. At this point, I'm really freaked out. I've never had any auditory hallucinations before, and it seems so real. My best friend in school, let's call him Vince, had heard all my stories. One day after school, our conversation went something like this. So, you're so sure that your house is haunted, right? It's not funny, Vince. It's really screwed up that all this crap keeps happening to me. I mean, what's going on? Is this normal? I know what we can do to find out. I remember he had this stupid smile on his face with a wonderful idea. What's that? We can get a Ouija board, talk to them, and see what they want. So that was that. We decided that after school we would go to Walmart, an all-purpose grocery store, and buy a Ouija board to find out exactly what they wanted. We had it all planned out. I even found some candles that I could light to make sure it worked or something. After school came, we set everything up, and both of us put 2 fingers on the planchette. I ask, is there anyone in here that wants to talk to us? We invite you to come, talk to us, make yourself known. This is where things started to get weird. The planchette started moving quickly. Our fingers could barely keep up with it. I would slide so fast past our fingers, all the way out of reach, and when it passed through both of our hands to where we weren't touching it anymore, it would stop. Things like that. I don't remember all things that were said and asked that night. I remember that we found there were many, many ghosts living there. We spoke to at least 6 entities. Each one would tell us their name, when they were born, when they died, what they did for a living. One of the more memorable ones was a sailor in the 1800s. I forgot his name, but he apparently died on a boating accident in about 1815. After we got done speaking with them, I read in the rules that you were always supposed to say goodbye. So we did so, and the plancher would zoom over the words goodbye at the bottom of the board. I remember the tip turning without our fingers moving at all, so it would be horizontal with the wording before zooming across it. It was unsettling. The first night ended up being the first of what totaled to 3 sessions we had with the board. About once a week, Vince would come over and we would repeat the experience. I was elated. Finally someone believed me. They didn't think I was crazy. I wasn't alone in this anymore. But, unfortunately, the 3rd session didn't go as well as the first 2. On the 3rd night, one of the entities, when we asked its name, for for some reason gave us a bunch of nonsense, like QRASSEFFEXQ. I ask why it won't give us its real name, and all it says is, ask me a question. What kind of question? Are you a good entity or a bad entity? I remember asking something like this back. I know the future. Ask me a question. At this point, I'm getting freaked out, but Vince was really headstrong. He wanted to know the future. But first, he wanted proof that it actually knew the future. He pulled out a quarter and turned out the lights. Now, the only light emitted in the room came from the candles lit around the board. I'll never forget the creepy shadows bouncing off the letters. Now he asked it, okay, heads or tails, and he flipped the quarter into the air to have it land somewhere on the other side. The planchet swiveled immediately and went to the T, and stayed there. Vince got up, turned on the light, and sure enough, the quarter had landed on its tails. We were dumbstruck, but we had to investigate further. We flipped the quarter 15 more times in the dark, and it would either go to the H or the T, and dutifully stop there. It was right every single time. Now, before I could stop Vince, he asked, when am I going to die? The pointer rushed to the numbers 2 and then 1 and then stopped. I didn't want to seem like a wuss in front of my friend, but I wanted to leave, to stop this madness at this point. Vince then looked at me and said, do it. When am I going to die? I asked. It landed on the numbers that happened to be my age, 1 year from now. After that, we bid it goodbye, but I always felt like it wanted me to play with the board by myself. It was this feeling of being watched. Every night, I knew it wanted me to open it. I refused to ever touch that thing again. I had it zipped up in a duffel bag. One night, while nobody was home, I was taking a shower, and when I got out of the shower, the duffel bag was open, and the board was on the floor and set up, ready to go. That was the last straw. I hurriedly put the board back into the box. I had a strong feeling that the only way I was going to get rid of this thing was to give it away. I somehow knew that if I didn't, it would keep showing up. I ended up giving the box away to one of the goth kids at my junior high. He had black fingernails, spiky hair, the whole 9 yards. He was excited to get the board, and I was excited to get rid of it. I figured it would be nicer to him than it was to me. The years passed by, and Vince and I grew apart. We'd stopped hanging out in high school as we had different interests, and he was older than me. One day, I got a call from my dad. He explained to me that he had some bad news. Vince had passed away. He suddenly got a rare form of cancer, and I'll spare you the details, but he was in a lot of pain before he passed. And yes, you know it's coming. It was when he was 21 years old. I remember going to his funeral and seeing him laying there in the coffin. I was supposed to feel sad, to feel bad, but all I felt was an impending dread creeping into me. This dread has never left me. What do you guys think I should do for the remaining year of my life? Would you believe the entity?